with you and learn more about what you've got going on.
Got a little bit of everything. So,
and I appreciate having another guy that is good looking with no hair on like me. So
when's he coming on?
we're just waiting for John to shave his head. That's what it really is.
The thing is if I shave my head, I'm going to have to grow the beard out because that's just a look, and it looks great.
I honestly think I shaved more with a bald head than I do with just the beard. So it was ridiculous.
That's awesome. Justin, where are you at? Are you here in Utah?
I'm actually in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places. So,
okay.
But one of those things where the whole state of Utah is one of those things I've wanted to get to for a long time. Spent a lot of time in Colorado and just never made it south. So I've driven through a couple times, but haven't spent a ton of time there.
And
so are you from Omaha or what took you to Omaha?
So folks moved from Ohio out to here when I was about 2, grew up out here, left, went to school in Colorado. Met a girl, came back, tried to get set up here, and then got divorced and just stayed. So
I was going to say, it all starts with meeting a girl. You know? As soon as you said that, it's over. That's where it all starts.
Yeah. So it was a good choice at the time, but coming out of college, it was post 9/11. It was weird. So, it is what it is, but it's been a good fit and lots of cool opportunities popped up while I've been here. So,
sure. Well, that's kind of a hotbed area too. We've had some people on from Oklahoma, and we've talked to a lot of people that are getting some roots settled in Nebraska. And it just seems like between Nebraska and Oklahoma, it's a hotbed for CBD and cannabis as a whole.
Oh yeah, I mean we have you can't go anywhere in the state without seeing feral hemp that was planted by the USDA for the Hemp for Victory. So it's comical that with COVID, my girlfriend and I will get out, we'll drive around and just kind of get some sun, and literally acres and acres and acres of feral hemp just popping up everywhere, and it's just legacy hemp from whatever else. So.
Now, what is the purpose of that hemp? Is it for CBD? Is it industrial? A little of both? What are they doing with it?
So the feral hemp that we have growing here was for the Hemp for Victory. So it was all for tying up battleships and rope during World War II. So we have, thousands of acres that are just naturally growing. It's all hot. If you were to test it, I'm sure it's not compliant, but it's just, it is everywhere. You get out in the panhandle and it's, 100 acres, 200 acres of just hemp as far as the eye can see. But it's always been the naughty plant. You're not supposed to touch it. You're not supposed to, cut it down or, you got to call the state sometimes. So it's funny to see it, but as people start to realize that there's a lot more opportunity for it. People are starting to embrace it. We just got our first ISO certified lab this past week, actually on Monday. So we're having all kinds of fun stuff, but we're dealing with all kinds of interesting things with the governor that doesn't necessarily want to move forward with hemp, but we're dragging him kicking and screaming all the way through. So we're doing what we can.
So what does that look like? If the governor is against it, obviously did you guys have it on the ballot for during elections to move it forward? How's that working in your state?
Yeah.
To really push the agenda forward, knowing that the governor is kind of opposed to it? Is it more the state representatives that are pushing this along, or how? Give us a little of how that's working.
So we've got the state's really kind of doing a lot so we got senators and governors that are kind of fighting a little bit, but our governor is a little slow on the uptake. So when they did go through and they passed the USDA guidelines for us, they basically kicked having a hemp council out a year or two. So as a matter of fact, our state, they granted processor licenses. And then, so I sit on the board for the Nebraska Hemp Industries Association too. And then they passed they have some legislation coming up that says that you can't extract oil from hemp. And we're like, well, you granted processor license. Well, yeah, it's decortication. That's processing hemp, right? It's like, well, no, those people are setting up CBD plants, and they're like, oh, well, that's not what we meant. That's no, hold on, wait a minute. So they've been kind of backtracking a little bit. They actually, for a period of time, had a requirement they were trying to get where if you're transporting more than 1 pound of hemp in the state of Nebraska, you have to notify the state patrol 7 days prior to transporting that hemp. So 1 pound in hemp is, as everybody probably on this knows, is nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So we as a data company joked around about setting up an email blast that send a couple 100,000 emails a day saying, I will transport between 1 gram and 100 tons of hemp somewhere in the state of Nebraska, weather permitting, in the next 7 days. I'm just flooding the state patrol inbox with compliant forms. I mean, it's not the most ethical thing to do, but we joked about it for about 5-10 minutes, then we stopped. So
well, it might get their attention.
yeah. So our office is next door to Senator Justin Wayne, who's been the forefront of hemp. He actually authored the bill, so he's a good ally to have. He's a good person, but we've got a lot of people in the state. I mean, so Bish Enterprises is out of Nebraska, and they do a lot of hemp harvesting equipment, things like that. We've got all these different things, but our big focus is we feel like it's going to be more fiber and seed out of Nebraska than it will be CBD. You'll still see people growing CBD and all that, but we're kind of America's factory for growing grain and things like that. So for us, we'll hopefully see a lot of resurgence in fiber and seed production out of Nebraska, so the Midwest in general. So
yeah, so, and Manny can really speak more on this than I can because she's been so heavily involved on the industrial side, but I've seen a lot of different hemp associations and their agendas coming through. There is a lot of money that is being poured into the industrial hemp side to get it going. And I mean, I kind of feel the same way. Utah, yeah, we're going to have our CBD chain going, but I think Utah will turn more into an industrial side. And I know there's just a lot of state hemp associations that are really pushing the industrial side because of so many things that can be done with it. I think we're right in line with what you're saying in Nebraska and what you're seeing there. So,
yeah, and we've even had some. So we're Midwesterners, so we kind of communicate well with everybody. That's why we have all the call centers and stuff. It's a neutral accent. So,
yeah. What they say about Utah?
Huh?
That's what they say about Utah.
Yeah. So
that's right.
That's why we have so many call centers.
Yeah. It's ridiculous the amount of stuff that's in this town, but it's been interesting because we'll reach out to Iowa. So we're doing some work with some guys in Iowa to help them with their hemp program. But they have all kinds of interesting issues that are coming up, and then the way that they're doing it is you can get a license for 40 acres per person, but the state is pushing to have the criminal investigation unit do the lab testing for the entire state. So they have a bill out right now where they're hiring 3 criminalists, is the language in that bill, to test the hemp in Iowa, which kind of puts everybody behind the 8 ball and puts them as a criminal to justify their innocence with hemp later on. So we're helping those guys out with some of the stuff we do.
And hopefully they understand that the plant can get hot and not criminalize somebody for a hot plant,
Yeah.
Well, did you see in Wyoming the farmers that are arrested for hemp? There's a big political press release recently, and it's all over in Wyoming. A big group of hemp farmers were just arrested and charged criminally for cannabis, and it tested at 0.06 or 0.6, like not even 0.1.
You'd smoke a whole truckload and you wouldn't get anywhere near high.
Yeah, exactly. And over this, did you kind of talk about what you do? What does Hemp Batch Tracker do?
Oh, sure.
Business. Yeah. Explain it a little bit so that we can dive in, because I've got a lot of questions around this for Utah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if it looks like the name is across my chin. So if you see me doing this, I'm trying to get
That's why. Well,
face.
here I can. When I do this,
and then
She took herself out of the equation.
Whatever. So, but yeah,
tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So what we do is our story is we're originally a data science consulting firm. So we do business intelligence, machine learning, AI, things like that. But we focused on the steel toe industry is what we call them. So it's farming, agriculture. We do manufacturing, heavy equipment, stuff like that. And in the process, we built a solution for a Fortune 500 company here out of Omaha for tracking. They just needed some basic recall tracking. They went to SAP. They said, no problem, we can do this. It's $750,000 per license. You need 70 of them. Press here, sign hard. So they came to us. We built the solution, but we retained the IP. So we have an IP attorney as one of our owners. So in the process of looking at marketing and what else you could do with this, we realized we heard the story about Mississippi with fentanyl-laced CBD. So 6 people died from overdoses on fentanyl, and the state didn't know what to do. And to be safe, they pulled all the hemp CBD out of Mississippi. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it's coming from. Everything's gone. There's no recall mechanism. So we realized that we'd built something that could have prevented that. So we tore everything down, built it from the ground back up, specific to hemp. So what we have is hemp tracking software. We jokingly like to say that we're metric, but people still like us. So it's, until we get a cease and desist, we'll use that joke. But so we do, from a farmer's perspective, we are a digital record for their state license, their seed certificate if they have one, their seed genetics, the field notes they might take for inputs. If you have a crop inspection for hemp insurance or crop insurance, we can log that in the system. If you have a state inspection, we can have that digitally tied to your crops, your plants. If you want to take a picture of you out in the field with your dog in your hemp field, you can do that, and we can log it in the system. And then when a consumer scans a QR code much further down the process and the life cycle of that hemp, they can go back through and they can see all that data. They can connect to your brand. They can link to your social media. They can see all the different details and all that. But the goal, and obviously COAs and things like that. But our goal is to basically be a data repository, a third-party data source that helps people track all the different data points. And then where we kind of stand out a little different than some of the other companies, seed to sale, track and trace, or what everyone kind of labels us. We're a little odd duck because we can cover a lot more from a common sense standpoint. So a lot of companies that are doing cannabis tracking grams and kilos, or you might have a hemp farmer that tracks it in truckloads and tons. So, and obviously fiber and seed and all that has a whole different thing. No one's going to pull a board out of a building and test it for THC content. So that hemp producer has a whole different set of needs than somebody growing CBD. But we provide both the state and law enforcement agencies a free license of our software. So we are funded completely by the people that use the technology, which is nice because you're not using anti-hemp tax dollars or tax base to fund something like this. And then it puts us in a position to be an advocate and an advisor to those people, saying, well, here's common sense with hemp. Like processing doesn't include just decortication for the state of Nebraska. So it's been pretty well received. We've talked to obviously our state. We're working on getting things set up here. We're in part of a pilot program potentially for Puerto Rico to be the default on for theirs. We're looking at some things in Canada already. Had an interesting conversation with the director of cannabis in the state a while back, pre-COVID, where they had that 70 pounds of hemp that got caught in transport basically because the FedEx driver tipped them off. And it was the largest marijuana bust in New York City history for the last 20 years. And it was going to a cancer clinic. It was all documented hemp. But we're trying to be that voice of logic and for a lot of the people that are scared to death of what hemp really is and what it can do.
So go ahead, Ry.
I was just going to say, I love what you're doing here because in a lot of different industries and in farming and whatnot, every time they have a harvest, every time they do something, they have, a lot with that crop or that harvest, right? What this now allows is for somebody, every time they harvest from their greenhouse or from a field, they can basically tag that and say, okay, now we know everything about this. It's logged in the system, and then they can track even where it goes from there and start following that chain along. And I love that you guys, I love what you said, how you give the state and the law enforcement a free license to it as well, because now they can actually see what's going on along that history, along the journey of that product. And if they can show somebody bought it through a QR code or whatnot, they can see exactly what was bought, what was sold. It shifts the liability off of those businesses and now puts it with the accountable party, which is the consumer. And so I love what you're doing there. It's a great product you guys have there.
Thanks.
And one of the big things we face, right, is what's coming black market and across state lines, right? And so really being able to know on the elector level, right, of what's in our market, what are you competing against, what are our real battles? I think that's super valuable too. So help me understand this. When a consumer or when somebody, say a farmer, sells their product and they're using your tracking software, right? Mm-hmm. And then the next person gets a hold of it, and that, or say the extraction or the lab making it into a distillate. And then from there, the distillate is sold to manufacturers making product. Do each of those people have to have a license on your software right? Like how do you mitigate or keep people on that tracking system?
Yep. So part of it is, going back to where it started with the food manufacturing facility. If you're adding CBD into cookies, let's say, you have all the data that comes with the CBD, but you also have the data that goes with making cookies, because you have to, track the eggs and the sugar and all that kind of stuff. So if you get into a mixed use like that, it's a many to many relationship. So you're having a batch going into a batch, it's potentially going into another batch and yet another batch. And so our data science background helps us link all those together. So part of the reason why we're giving the state agencies a free pass to use the software is they're just running a report. It's just a portal. It's I have batch A, B, C, D, E, Julian date, whatever the case may be, and they can put that in and hit search. That's it. That's why Google's free, right? Because you're just querying information. That's it. We've also been very careful to make sure that we're limiting what you can see based on your use. So we are a bad broker's worst nightmare, because the guy I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. You don't have access to the COAs. You can't see the data unless you are the authorized person to represent that product. Which is funny, because we've had 2 phone calls to date that have been people screaming at us, and they're people that have been kind of did by backers, and they don't like what we're doing. But everyone who's legitimate hemp producer, people that come from the cannabis industry that have had bad experience with something that's, RFID tags and buying extra equipment, and it's just obtuse and it doesn't work. We built it to not be that, because we don't want to be those guys.
Awesome.
But we've had a lot of fun with it, and it's been interesting, all the different use cases, and then you add in, layers upon layers upon layers, and we keep refining it. But we built it data heavy so that we can adjust to the market and stay in front of the legislation, all that kind of stuff. So it's been a blast.
So when you say stay in front of legislation, what are some of the topics that you think need to be addressed, or some of the real solutions that are being brought forward, hopefully?
I think when you look at what long-term regulation will look like for hemp, especially in the United States, it's going to follow some existing template. As much as I'd love to say that we're a creative thinking company, we tend to fall back on what we know. So looking at how do you regulate, how you look at alcohol or tobacco or anything like that. it's going to be a USDA or a FDA or even a CDC format. Those are the three alphabet teams that we're looking at partnering with, because that's what they know. That's what's worked. That's what they have in place. That's how you can track it, and that's how you can also
how you can relate it to. It's all like you said. It's
yeah.
Do you think though it takes a completely different animal when it can be it really fills in every vertical possible, from medicine to building supplies to medicine, vitamin versus, even just the differentiation between medicine and vitamin.
Yeah. That's where, when you get to like nutraceuticals and things like that, where people are going to start looking at how does CBD fit in an FDA model? Well, the first thing the FDA is going to want to know is what's in it. What data points can you validate? And that's where we can step in and say, okay, if you need us to add, pick a derivative that we haven't thought of yet. CBD flavored rocks. I don't know why not, right? If you want to do that, you need to know what's in that. And so we just add those data points on what you're tracking, and you can track it. So, because ultimately when they go back to back test anything, it's always, where did it come from? Who's had it? Where did it go wrong? That's the biggest thing with what we saw in the food industry is batch dispersion. So going back to cookies, it's an easy analogy for everybody, but when you make cookie dough, you have a lot of different things that go in it. Well, a pinch of salt goes into your cookies. Well, if the industrial side of it, if you have a 4,000 gallon container of salt and you get to the bottom of that container and there's a dead rat in the bottom, all the pinches of salt that went into all those cookies now could potentially be contaminated. And it has gone into everything that has salt in that facility. So even though it's just the salt that's bad, you have to go and track everything else spiderweb style. And if you're doing, peanut butter chip cookies, chocolate chip cookies, blue cookies, green cookies, whatever, and they're all different lines, you now have those different lines. And if they've been mixed batches to get a sampler pack or something like that, you have mixed batches and all that. So that's where the CDC recall, the FDA recalls, those things are tough, because you need to know where everything came from.
Which is even more important when we talk about having a system like yours. This is something we talk about almost every day on our show, is the capability of the plant to suck everything up out of the ground, and understanding and being able to track it all the way back to the heavy metals that were pulled from the soil in your tincture that you consumed 6 months later, or a year later. Yeah.
And the flip side, if you're using hemp to do like soil remediation, we'll use Chernobyl as an example. They planted hemp to denuke the soil around.
Nuclearize or whatever.
Well, they just destroyed that hemp. There's no way it went anywhere beyond a burn pile. But tracking how much radiation comes out of that hemp every year helps you set a benchmark. Where's that line in the sand? How much has come out? How much are you done yet? How many more years do you have to grow? So,
and that's a good point too, because knowing that hemp does pull out pesticides and chemicals out of the ground, how many crops of hemp do you have to use before essentially that soil is clean, where you can now grow for consumer use? Mm-hmm. To me, that's an interesting question. I did have one question for you though, with your software, with your tracking system. How has that helped you get in front of the legislatures? How has it helped you really help the state representatives move cannabis along in your state, or has it? Have you been able to use it as a useful tool to help with legislation?
Yes and no. Depends on who you talk to at the state level. So we sent this out to all 50 states, the governor's offices, and said, look, we have this solution. It doesn't cost your taxpayers a dime. It's paid for by the users. And by the way, when I say paid for by the users, people are like, oh God, this is super expensive. We're $20 an acre for a farmer. That's it. So it's super approachable, super easy to do. But they go, we don't have any money in the budget to buy software. Like, you don't even have to get approval for this. Because if they put out an RFP or something like that, it's not going to cover the full, breadth of what we can track, which is starting to get into GMP, and we're looking at LIMS software for a lab and things like that. We're probably 95% of the way to being a full LIMS software for a lab facility. We'll be 100% by the end of the year, but when you put it in front of people that get it, they're like, this is exactly what we need, because they are fearful of what hemp can lead to in a state that doesn't have a legal cannabis side, rec side. The states that have both, they're more interested in it because it keeps two separate sets of data. So it's a separate platform. So you can't accidentally put your cannabis, which is taxed differently than hemp, in the wrong platform and try and get away with paying less in taxes. So it's weird to see the crossovers, but it's been fun to see the responses. And anytime someone sends back we don't have the budget for it, like, you don't need a budget for it. We're just giving it to you. I'll give you a password tomorrow and you can log in and start doing it right now. It kind of blows some people's minds because big industries don't work that way. If they want to pay us a couple $1 million, that's fine. I'll take the money. I don't care.
So in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking that you almost need everybody that uses your system should have your logo or something showing that, like, you're tracker certified, right? You're Hemp Batch Tracker certified.
Yep.
That way, if there's any problem in the future and the state or law enforcement needs to be involved, they can see, hey, this product has been using the tracker and has the whole history of the product. We can now go and investigate, and almost like, I don't want to call it insurance, but almost a surety that when somebody puts product out on the shelf, if they're associated with your tracker, there's almost a protection there for them, just because the entire history of that product is known. And like in the case of Mississippi, you were saying that your system could have prevented that. Now they could have gone back to see, okay, what really happened? Where, like you're saying, where did this really go wrong? Was it on the business end? Was it on the farming end? Was it on the consumer end? Where did this go wrong? All of that data is there now. And so you need to have some type of certification or something where they could have, even like on a product next to a QR code, I could see the Hemp Batch Tracker logo right there. So people know, hey, this is a legitimate product.
Yeah, and we're starting to see spillover and other things, but it's funny you should mention that with the backup. So it's super early stages, so I'll be dancing around a little bit with the verbiage here, but we have an individual who feels like he's going to be targeted by his state because he has a criminal record for growing marijuana and cannabis. He's gotten out of that. He doesn't want to go back to jail. He wants to grow hemp, and that's it. So he is fearful that he will be the example that will be made in the near future with some legislation coming down. So I'm going to go meet the guy on Friday, and which means I have to break out my COVID containment series here. So I'm gonna get this right.
So we're going to go out and talk to this guy, and
$20 I ever spent on eBay. But we're going to go out and talk to this guy, and then
you're awesome.
We're going to basically set him up. It's somebody that we have a vested interest in making sure he's doing well, but we're going to give him the tracking element of what we have so when they do knock on his door and go, you're in violation of this, and they have the camera crews in his face, he can pull out and say, I'm tracking the pH, in my soil. I'm tracking soil samples. I'm tracking the inputs. I'm tracking the water usage. I have all this stuff. How am I not compliant? And we're really hoping it blows up on their face with the people that are going to, potentially try and make it a sacrificial lamb out of this guy, where he can shoot it all down with hard data that's hard to dispute. So really hope it doesn't come to that for him, but he feels like he's the guy that's going to be the nail that sticks out that gets the hammer. So
I feel like this would save a lot of resources lost in fighting these fights. I mean, our states and governments are putting so much money into defending or fighting or supporting the charges that have been made, even on these farmers in Wyoming. That, I mean, yeah, they're the resources, money, and time, not just on the criminal or the person convicted, right? But the state that's losing.
Yeah, and some of the other co-founders, I mean, we've got friends and family that are in law enforcement and even the DEA. So we've had informal conversations with multiple organizations around the country. And their big thing is like, look, it is, the DEA is like, it's not a controlled substance. We don't want it. It's paperwork. Get it off my desk. Like, I don't want to see this. Like, they don't care. I mean, it's the fugitive. I don't care. It's that whole moment. They want it gone because they're busy worried about the people doing fentanyl and things like that. So they'd rather track that. Local law enforcement. I know that this is an industry where people don't necessarily want to see police or feel like that they're kind of the enemy, but for a law enforcement official in a state that doesn't have legal cannabis, you need to know real fast if you're dealing with Farmer Bob from somewhere out in the country, or potentially if you're dealing with a cartel person moving a ridiculous amount of cannabis through. Two completely different traffic stops, especially when it comes to what could happen. Is there an ambush? Is there something nefarious happening like that? So any of the law enforcement people we've talked to, they want to see the story. They want to be able to make a good decision in the moment, because they have to default on the side of the law, which is I need to detain, I need to seize, and then once everything is secure and I can breathe and look things through and get a lab and all that kind of stuff, then I can figure out, all right, is this or is this not legal? And if it is, you let go. But it could take 2 or 3 weeks, or months. I mean, it just depends on the court systems and what they do. So,
well, and especially depending on what they've picked up, right, and what they've taken. If it's distillate versus a isolate THC, or a distillate that's heavier or pure THC or Delta 9 compared to let alone the flowers. It's just more and more intense. It seems the more concentrated it becomes. And I think that just understanding and having the entire background is, I also know they're shipping truckloads constantly. And so I hadn't even thought about like you said, the general traffic stop is completely different in the officer's safety.
Yeah.
Not even in what happens to the criminal or the person, holding the product. But
and the way they train law enforcement to find the bad actors is through discrepancies in stories. So that's why you see this is one of the things we learned from talking to the guys, where it's you separate the parties, and if the stories don't match, something's up.
Sure.
And it requires deeper things. So what we do, because I mean, to do CBD or to track hemp, I mean, you can swap things out. Like I keep this on my desk as kind of a joke, but so just hemp flower. Oh, there's the camera, and it has a little blockchain QR code. Well, if I peel this off, I'm now CBD flower. I mean, there's nothing stopping a person from doing that. So. But if you have enough detailed information, here's the licensed producer that grew this hemp, here's the shipment date. If a producer really wants to be to the nth degree, they could take a picture of the truck, the driver, and his photo ID, and link that to the instance. It left, Omaha on Tuesday afternoon. It will be in Salt Lake City by Friday at noon. And if I end up in Houston, Texas on Saturday, pretty easy for someone to figure out this is not where it's supposed to be. If I'm in,
it's not where it says it is.
Yeah, and I need to look further into this, and that's where you start looking at detention and all that good stuff. Not good stuff, but the idea is they'll have enough of a story through the data set they can see without having to give up too much information, because we need to also protect the backside of it, which is your chain of custody for evidence. If you're protecting hemp producers and hemp shipping and all that, there needs to come a point where they have to give you a subpoena to get the full data. And that's where we're working with different law firms and even our internal agency to see where that line is. Because some people don't want their full name on a shipment. Like, okay, well, if you're a legal hemp producer, you're probably already on the state radar for that. I mean,
right.
Not you're not a ghost individual, but and they're going to pull your ID at the traffic stop, so they know who you are anyway. So there's that fine line of what's comfortable and what's too much, and we're going to continue to work with that, and then it'll be a state-by-state basis on what they need and what they want.
I would suspect that the more these types of solutions come to surface and we're able to give them and give that comfort out, it will decrease that fear that comes with having your name on the transportation license or on the paper, or you know what I mean? It becomes a completely different risk factor.
Yeah.
You know, the risk is no longer 100% on the driver in fear of spending time in prison over hauling a.
Yeah. The funny thing is that the people that are worried about putting their name on a shipment of hemp will also go on Facebook and fill out the "What kind of potato I am" survey that is just generating data for marketing. You know, I mean, it's
Yes.
it's a little crazy, you know, because that's the other side of what we've done in the past is the data side, and the amount of data that you can use to do any number of things is creepy. It's really, truly creepy.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty.
What's
Go ahead, Ryan.
I was just gonna say, what's the future of home? Hemp Batch Tracker. Are there some things that you've got in the works that you can share with us? Where are you going with it?
We're going anywhere and everywhere.
Okay.
And hopefully to Utah, because I worked in a ski shop in Denver and never got to ski. It was the ultimate like bait and switch. I work in a ski shop, get pro form, get free tickets. You can't get weekends off though, so you can't go skiing ever. So so I need to get out to Utah. But it may actually show up while we're on this call, but we have a partner out of Wisconsin that has a handheld testing unit that can test for THC and CBD even in a glass container in 1 second. So it's just a little device that you hold the button and it'll read both of those things. It'll then log in our system that it had been tested. They are the same technology on a defense contractor level. They're using, allegedly anyway, so maybe from space to tell you what brand of cigarettes a guy has in his pocket in Afghanistan. So they can test for all kinds of things, heavy metals. They're coming from the big pharma space. But that device is showing up literally any minute now for us to play with and test, to link to our system, to have it as a in-field testing unit. So back to the law enforcement side, you pull out a device that's the size of a chocolate taco, little ice cream treat. And you can scan hemp either in a container or in a bag or raw leaf, or even in the field. You attach it to a drone and you can go out and test for levels. So we're working on that. We're working on all kinds of fun stuff. But the end result is we want to try and get that land rush. So we're trying to get as many people partnered with as possible, so that when we go to a state and they're going to subsidize a THC remediation facility or something like that, we can say, look, don't build it here. You don't get hot hemp in that part of the state. You build it over here, so that the industry itself is better sustained. Having a situation where you're subsidizing it with tax dollars, you're setting it up wrong because you don't know any better. We'll have all of it, and that's where we're going to work with the states hopefully to do that.
I'm excited to make some intros because this is a conversation we have with the state and ag department quite a bit. There's another gentleman I'd love to introduce you to also that's very data driven on the satellite.
Oh, cool.
Be a great resource or point of contact on he's got a lot of clients out in Thailand, but has done a very good job. And I'm really excited to bring this. Like I said, I'd love to learn more. I'd even enjoy seeing a demo or kind of how it looks like as a user. And then you said cost-wise, for me as a buyer or user, you said $30 a month?
$20 per acre per year.
Okay. And then what about somebody who, I don't have a farm, right? But I may want to use it as a broker or as anything. Like, what about as an association? Is this something that as an association could benefit our organization in whole? And tell me what that would look like. How do you see it?
Yeah, so the licenses we have currently are built around farmer. So we have a farmer license at $20 an acre. We have a processor or extractor license that is kind of view only. some limited functionality, but that one is actually free. But it requires all of your farmers to have their own license. We also recognize that if you're doing, sorry, you can hear my dog trying to get comfortable in the background there.
I love it.
Who's part of the reason why we have a dog for the logo. He's actually on CBD. He's a gun shy hunting dog. So it's how he exists in this world. But so we realize that there are contractual obligations with processors. So we have a license where the processor pays for the farmer's license, so it's free to the farmer, but it gives transparency back and forth. So the farmer can see what the processor's doing after they hand it off, and the processor can see what's going on in the field in real time. So that's $17 per licensed acre. Labs are free. We give it to the labs for free because they're just uploading a document typically, and we can do a direct integration, which makes really nice setup for building COAs and all that. Brokers, depending on what they're doing with the data, they typically are under a viewer license, which is just generating a report. As we get further into the broker side of the business, we'll figure out exactly if we want to do a full license for them with some additional vetting, or if we want to just have it be part of the farmer side or the processor side, the manufacturing side.
I actually have somebody in mind, and I don't even know if they fall into the broker category. But this business, they basically find the deal, broker the deal, but they purchase from the farmer or the product and then resell.
Mm-hmm.
But they could be flour, they could be seeds, they could be genetic. I mean, they could be anything on that platform, but they're not necessarily on the in-between, contract side, but they're definitely still in broker piece.
Yeah, and depending on how they're doing it, I mean, that's where the flexibility comes in. I mean, the licenses it's not one license and the next license. If you're fully integrated from farm all to the consumer, we just get you the license that applies to that, and that's all it is. I mean, we recognize that this is an industry that when we started looking at how you could potentially grow and produce hemp, it's a nightmare from a logistics standpoint. Because that's why you see a lot of other testing companies or other, tracking companies that'll just be CBD because that's easy to track CBD. It's a pretty linear process. But when you get into dual crop or you get into, any of the things you can do in hemp, I mean, batteries, cars. Lotus has a Lotus that has hemp. It was made out of hemp. Seen that? I'm a car guy, so I want to drive that.
BMW does too.
Yeah, there you go.
And Levi's have a whole clothing line now out of hemp.
We had a guy in Nebraska that was approached by Patagonia to supply all of his hemp fiber.
Yeah.
He had to tell him no. They came to him and said, "We need X amount of hemp fiber in 3 months." He goes, I can't. There's not enough hemp fiber in the state to provide that. Like, well, we need it now. And he's like, I can't do it. I can't get it. He goes, if I run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, I'll have a third of that order.
Okay, so everybody that's listening, listen up when we talk about this. You just spoke to everything I've been preaching when you come to, there are big companies that need it in the United States and are looking to buy from the United States on the industrial fiber. It's not a matter of the opportunities are there, right? And not just Patagonia, but building supplies and lots of big companies. And I'm excited to hear this because it really has been like an egg before the chicken or chicken before the egg conversation. And you just confirmed that, hi, Utah, we want to grow, we want to manufacture, we want to distribute. We have lots of opportunity. We definitely will not compete with the Midwest on acreage for growing hemp, as you explained, but on the manufacturing and distribution side, I think we'll definitely put ourselves on the footprint.
So we one of our listeners just asked a really great question, and I think it's kind of relevant because I'm curious. I don't know. When I don't own something or I don't have something or I don't have the ability to produce something, I always look at my resources, right? And Sean Taylor, I don't know if you can bring it up, Mandy, but Sean Taylor asked, can a grower purchase another farmer's crop and sell it? Do you need a different license for that? So like they had to say no to Patagonia, but can they say, yes, I've got the ability to do maybe a fraction of that, but if I go to a couple other farmers, I can purchase their product and then provide you. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So couple variables in that question. The short answer is yes. But if the original farmer was tracking their hemp and all their data and all that, it's literally just linking that history with that hemp to the next person, which is the batch into a batch. So if you're one farmer and another farmer, like a co-op, for instance, is a great example. You have all the farmers bringing their stuff to a co-op facility to get better purchasing power, better selling agreements, things like that. Every farmer, even every lot that a farmer might bring to a co-op like that, is then tracked individually. So we built it to be as wide open or as narrow as you want it to be. If you want to get really, really geeky with this and track to the plant, good. We don't know why you would. Just, we advocate, like, you're growing hemp. Why would you want to the specific plant? Maybe you're growing the Simpsons tobacco and you're mixing hemp into it, something like that. But that dated myself with the tobacco joke. But anyway,
I got it. It's cool.
That cow breaking tobacco. Yeah. Anyway.
It sounds like a paper trail nightmare to do that. So that makes sense.
It actually is and it isn't. So it's a lot easier. And then the price range for the testers. So initially it was about $15,000 a unit.
Wow.
They have revamped it a little bit, redone some technology, and they're looking at right now right around $3,000 to $5,000 a unit. That will come down. He has an open order for $3 million worth of product, and so they're working on it. But it's one of those things where you talk about being a good business and a good person. Getting to know that company and working with them and just being upfront and transparent about what we want to do and how we want to work together. Somebody else approached him and he goes, "No, pound sand. These guys, full disclosure up front, we're buddies and all that." The guy's shipping me a laptop and two cell phones that are connected to him. And he's like, "Oh, I forgot to log out of my Facebook." I'm not going to do anything. But it's that, if you're transparent and you're up to the right things, you can get some really cool stuff going on.
Right.
Well, I think that it's necessary and it speaks volumes. I really am excited to further this conversation with even our team. We have another meeting coming up on the 21st. I'd love to even have you call in, but we're going to be addressing some of these concerns specifically within our industry. And yeah, anytime you want to join on, it'll be a board and advisory meeting for the industry, specifically in Utah, but nationwide also. But if you are looking to get into Utah, I think that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, so I was a former PayPal guy. I was a sales guy for PayPal for years. So the payment processing side of it, I was the guy at PayPal that found the fringe industries to sell to. So, one of the companies was akbuilder.com. I got them to use PayPal. So it's something where the industries and the underwriting and all that kind of stuff, we've had a couple different times we talked about using it for underwriting, using it for additional vetting, using it for different things. So if anybody's on this call that has an interesting use case, I know you guys obviously are payment processing, so we'll talk about that offline. But if anybody's got a use case where data or access to some or all of that data can help with their business model, definitely let us know, because we want to figure out what the fit is, what it could be, and if it's a benefit to the industry as a whole, we'll do it. So.
Well, I'm super passionate about that in this industry as a whole, from market research and what's available, like I said, this is all conversation I want to dive into. I don't feel like I even know enough, but I definitely want to make some intros and sit next to, as other people do, have this conversation, because I think that it's a solution that we're hungry for in the state. And even at $15,000 per tester, I look at, that's not even a month's salary for our attorneys and our police force, on one case where somebody has been convicted wrong or whatever, right? Mischarged.
Yeah. They actually presented it in North Carolina to the Attorney General and all the state police out there. And they went to a lab facility, and they walked in, and the guys were like, "Yeah, we're all compliant. Everything we have, it's good to go. Don't worry about it." They tested 15 samples, and not one of them was compliant.
Wow.
And
Interesting.
so that facility were like, "Okay, well, thanks, guys. Great seeing you. You can leave now. Okay, go. Get out the door. The door's over here. Let's go. We got other meetings." They walked out, and the Attorney General went, "Wait a minute. That's not compliant hemp. That's cannabis. We should arrest them." He's like, "No, stop. You can't do that. You can't let somebody come into your house in good faith and then turn around and arrest them." So they, because their testing equipment wasn't calibrated right.
Right.
And so they were using stuff that was from the early side of the industry where it was taking 30 or 40 minutes to get a result. And these guys can do 30 tests in 30 seconds and get a true average of the plant, which is dangerous and good at the same time. But 1% THC has a lot of problems for everybody.
I'm fascinated. Like you said, there's a lot of, we've even interviewed other people that have on-site or portable testing units, right, that are really great. There's trace and tracks things for the medical industry or the cannabis industry, but none of them even cross over into the social media and the sales piece. When we talk about community, the value of connecting to people buy from people they know and like, right? And for the reason outside of your product being the best CBD product or your product being the strongest house that's being built, right? Tell me a little bit about where that's really been value add on the platform, because I think that's a piece that's not touched on in any other platforms when it crosses from the sale to or B2B to B2C even.
Yeah. So the QR code technology, if you've been around the industry even for a couple months, you've seen that on a product. It's probably on anything that's on any of your desks right now, but most people just link that to a COA, which is fine. But we've expanded that out to, if the marketing need is there, to link social media profiles, your Facebook page, your LinkedIn. We talked about the field notes. So if you're taking pictures of, a dog or something like that in the field, you can do that. You can really tell a story, and you can build that prominence that helps you stand out on the shelf compared to somebody who's just, it's CBD, don't worry about it. Because we feel like CBD especially is going to turn into kind of like California wine, where it's regional varieties. It's going to be, this has lovely terroir and all that kind of stuff, where CBD will probably get to the same point, because you go into any dispensary or anywhere that has a bud tender or somebody like that behind it, they'll talk about the flavors, the notes, the terpenes, all the different things that go into it. And the more of that story you can tell at a consumer's pace, the more you can charge for your product, because it's there. You can prove it. You can prove it's good stuff and not Chinese CBD oil that's garbage.
Right.
Okay, so something I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that then it would allow you to basically share or market any content unfiltered around your product. So then you're not, and when I say unfiltered, I mean you're not battling like Google and social media ads and restrictions around saying cannabis or hemp. But then you can actually
So yes and no. So you can, by tying it in like that, you'll get the connectivity, but a lot of times people want that level of privacy too. So the market will dictate where that line is, but if you can get someone to like your Facebook page, you can promote all kinds of things directly to them for free.
Sure.
So a lot of people are like, go to my website, sign up. Don't do that. Have them go to your Facebook page and get a real-time feed. The bigger one is Instagram, believe it or not, because you cannot skip ads on Instagram. So we're seeing a lot of people that are in the space that are putting up lots of cool photography and things like that of hemp, because it's a beautiful plant when it's photographed right. Especially when you've got green pastures and things that everyone's cooped up inside with COVID quarantines.
Yeah.
But Facebook and Instagram things are definitely a cost-effective way to promote that stuff. But to have a ability for someone to link to that or get further marketing information,
right?
It's there. It's just a question of will people do it or not. We don't know yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. So kind of to go to something a little different. I don't know, Mandy, if you saw what I posted earlier today, going back to the legalization, but a group called the Marijuana Moment posted something this morning that says Congress will legalize marijuana in 2021 despite Biden opposition, Democratic senator said, which came from an interview from Senator Ed Markey out of Massachusetts. I think that's Massachusetts or Maine, one of the two. What is MA? What state is MA? That's Massachusetts, right?
Yep, Massachusetts.
Yeah. So I thought that was a very interesting article in talking about all of this. I mean, at some point that's going to cross the line, right? We're going to get across that finish line at some point, and hopefully it will help with all the battles that we're all dealing with on the state levels, you know, across the transportation lines from seed to sell. It's interesting. It's interesting to see. We keep saying it's coming, and maybe it'll happen Q1. Hopefully.
Yeah. An election year is a good year for that.
Do you think? Yeah. Do you think it will? What's your opinion? I don't think it will. I'll be shocked if it does. I think regulations, way too much has to be standardized and regulated. That I don't think that they're caught up.
If it weren't an election year, I don't know if it'd get that much visual. I mean, I want it to be legal. I mean, my dad's former health insurance executive, and you know, cannabis is definitely the cure for the opioid crisis. But the money behind the opioid crisis, supplying that demand, far outweighs the sway of something else. So I would love to see it go through, but I think as soon as the election's over, and it's whatever regime is in office at that point, you know, political affiliations aside, I think it'll probably cool off and go back on, unfortunately, because I think we're just starting to see some of the states, you know, that are getting into the medical side. They're easing into medical. You're seeing the adult use, the recreational side starting to kind of gain some things. But as soon as the FDA buys into hemp and CBD and things like that, that will be the tipping point, I think, into the cannabis side of the business. When they validate that part of the cannabis plant life cycle, then that starts validating the rest of the industry, and it starts going away from, you know, reefer madness and those dirty hippies to this is actually medicine where we all believe it is. So,
and I always laugh and joke because there's so much fighting going on. I always say if they would just go into session all smoking a joint, it'd probably go a lot better for them too. Just chill them out.
I've never met an angry cannabis user. If anyone has ever met someone, you know, like just really upset and angry all the time, just bitter, angry person, no, I've never met that person.
I have, however, been at plenty of meetings where I feel like I'm tense and somebody says, here, you need some CBD. I'm like, thank you.
Yep.
Here, use some of
this. We go to dirty. Sorry, Tim.
I love it.
Tim's message here in the thing, and he's definitely dirty hippie. You know,
I am. If that's what you want to call it, aren't we all?
But that's good. He got me. But yeah, we go to farming trade shows here in the Midwest with our stuff, and we're always promoting it. Part of it, we keep a big bowl of hemp flower sitting on the table, and it's hilarious because you'll see, you know, different farmers. We have a Mennonite community in the Midwest, so you see them walk through every once in a while, and you see, you know, the guys walk by like, what is this? And we tell them how much they can make an acre. And like, how do I grow it? How much can I grow? When can I start growing? Then you see other guys walk by and like they're just getting high on that stuff, and you know, the old curmudgeon guys, whatever. And then but the people that see it, and people try and steal it all the time, thinking it's, you know, $30,000 worth of cannabis or something like that. It's hilarious seeing it, but I keep hemp flower in my office specifically for people that have never seen it.
Yeah.
So if you're having conversations with people that are, you know, abstract or whatever, you put a hemp flower in their hand and they're like, can I have this? Is this legal? You know, they freak out.
Am I going to go to jail for holding this?
Yeah. that is the stigma that we have to break as an industry. You know, the cannabis or hemp, you have to look at that. I mean, I grew up, you know, like I said, with acres and acres and acres of hemp growing around us. And I was always told, you do not touch it because you can get high. You don't cut it down because you can go to jail if you have it. You definitely don't burn it and stand near the smoke because you'll get high and you could pass out, get brain damage, whatever. I mean, it was.
Did you have all your bonfires and all the kids were like puffing your? They were told.
You know, my parents meant well. They were just trying to protect their kid, but they were, you know, kids from the '60s. I mean, that was they were pretty conservative, non-hippie kids and all that. So, but now all of a sudden their son's in the hemp industry and like, wait, what does this do now? My knee hurts really bad. And how do I do, and how does this work? And this is legal. So it's fun.
Yeah.
We brought Tim back. Tim in the comments, got him back on board.
Well, it is interesting because you look at like the cigarette industry or even the beer industry, right? And you look at the commercials and the way that they propagated it to make it the norm, right? So before they would put, you know, somebody smoking a cigarette in commercials or in TV shows or in movies to help promote it, to say, hey, look, guys, if you want to be cool, smoke this, smoke a cigarette. They did the same thing with alcohol.
Yep.
And now you almost see a reverse where it's like, well, maybe to control the smoking, let's not put it in as much, or let's start putting these warning labels on it. You almost need that with cannabis, right? You need somebody that's willing to step up and market and be like, hey, look, this is okay. It's okay for you to use CBD. It's okay for you to grow this. I think it's going to take a little bit of that propagation, I guess, to push that along so that stigma is removed and saying, hey, it is okay. But then you've got that would just have a heyday with you if you tried that.
Yeah, and that's
somebody with a big old, you know,
yeah,
kahunas would have to come along to do that.
Well, and that's where we're hoping to be that in between, because the data that we have on our platform long term will be vital for states and agencies that are making laws. And we as a company have vowed to never actually produce hemp in our own. So we're strictly a software company. So we don't have a horse in the race that way.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because we have all kinds of fun stuff we could do with it around here. But we want them to trust us because we are that third party that's impartial. You know, we know that people like Tim, the dirty hippie, in our comment section. I'm going to pick on Tim. People like Tim don't like government because they're fearful of what they're going to do and how it's going to register. And it's just, you know, and they're right, because it's if you come from the illegal cannabis side to the legal hemp side, all of a sudden you're at risk. So for us to be that company that acts as the insulator, that can listen to people that are out growing and producing and hear what their fears are, and then put together data that supports that narrative the right way from a legislative standpoint. Look, you don't have to be afraid of it. These people want to be compliant because it's how they make money. It's how they feed their families. It's how you grow this industry. It's how you support communities that are struggling right now. And the way you do it is by common sense.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
To be fair, good point. Well, I love this conversation, and I could keep it going for a long time. It totally ties back into what we've talked about the last few shows, and then tomorrow Cody from UDAF is going to be on, and so this is a conversation that, again, I'd like to roll right over. But just like you, we're in a non-biased position, or I am. I don't have any personal invested interest in any CBD or hemp company or cannabis company, but I'm very passionate about elevating standards and creating the communication, I guess, the vital chain, right? The information stream. And so I'm really excited to be able to partner and talk again. I got distracted. Something popped up on my screen. Anyway, thank you very much for coming on. Let's stay in touch. Anything that we can do to help you moving forward right now?
I mean, if anybody's looking for, obviously you want to get started on like that, our website's just hempbatchtracker.com. We'll go as far as I'll set up a link and we'll get it for the collective here, but we'll do discounting for people that come from that organization so that they can get a price break. We're at a point where we're just trying to get people on, get feedback, get ideas for the next version, all that kind of stuff. So anybody that wants to be a part of that process, we're more than happy to talk about that. Just make excuse to get out to Utah. So that's one of those. I've just been emailing a company from Scotland this morning, so we're trying to go over to the UK as well. But we're looking for allies and friends and partners. So anybody that's out there looking for that, we're here.
Okay, well, let's further this conversation specifically around what we've got going. And really, as we're launching a much bigger organization than I imagined, but just like you, there's so much opportunity, and I think we can team up and just move the needle together. So anyways, thank you very much. Have a good day. We're at our solid hour. So
yeah. And real quick, Justin, go onto the Facebook page, connect with Tim. He just posted something saying he'd love to connect with you and talk to you more.
Definitely.
So go ahead and reach out to him. But yeah, thanks again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. We love what you're doing.
You guys are definitely killing the social media game compared to a lot of the other groups I track and follow. So keep up the good work and keep the information flowing. That's what we all need.
Well, thank you. The links, all of our videos are streaming also to YouTube. And then there's somebody that goes in and will help transcribe and kind of summarize so they become searchable tools and resources. So if you need the link or anything like that, you're welcome to use this as well for yourself. But yeah, if anybody needs anything or would like to reach out to Justin, don't hesitate. If you have any questions or need any help, let Ryan or I know. Other than that, we'll see you tomorrow with Cody.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.